Welcome everybody to the Cooperative City in Quarantine, episode 7 on Labour Day. So Workers' Day, very happy Workers' Day to you all. It is a very weird day. We would all be probably in having a big celebration in squares or depending on what is the habits of your cities. Instead, most of us are locked at home in our kitchens and so on. And we're very, very happy that you are joining us today and having this interesting discussion in this very interesting times on such a hot topic, if we can so say. So I myself am Daniela Patti from Utopian. As you all know, since a few years, we've been running the Cooperative City magazine on collaborative urban practices. And given the special conditions we're in, we decided to set up this series of webinars on Cooperative City in Quarantine. Currently, I myself and some of the speakers here have been on week 8 of quarantine, practically going off our heads and really looking forward to probably having a bit of interaction in real life. But in the meantime, we're very happy to be in this moment together with very interesting panelists that are with us. So I myself will be moderating today's discussion with my good friend and colleague, Simone D'Antonio. Hi, Simone, partner in crime in this episode.
Hi, Daniela. Hi, everybody. I'm Simone D'Antonio.
So Simone is responsible on communication for the network of Italian municipalities, ANCI, and very active on URBAC, the European program for capacity building of European municipalities amongst many of your activities. And labor and employment is a very close topic to you, Simone?
Yes, Daniela. I'm also one of the experts of the Urban Innovative Actions program, and currently I'm taking care of the project of the city of Cluj-Napoca, Future of Work, which is on the future of work in the cultural sector. And as also we're seeing in these weeks, labor is one of the fields most affected by the current situation of emergency, and many trends are emerging in these weeks, and I'm really happy to discuss with you and our great speakers today all these topics which are emerging, which I think is really interesting for the future of our cities right now.
And I see behind you that you have a very interesting hat. Where is it from?
It's from Vietnam. It's the hat of the people working in the rice fields.
Okay, so fitting the topic of today. So
yeah.
Remembering also workers not only from Europe, but also from elsewhere. Yeah, lovely. And also given your big passion on traveling. So we hope that you'll be getting back to your exotic travels so that you can tell us all about it soon when this crazy condition we're in will be over.
As soon as possible, I hope.
Okay, well, let's look into who are our very interesting speakers of today. So let me introduce you to Josef Zehetner, who is a project manager from the Innovation in Politics Institute. Hi, Josef.
Hi.
So where are you speaking with us? Where are you in now?
Actually, my institute is based in Vienna, but I live in Linz, so I'm speaking to you from Linz, Austria right now.
And you have a very fancy professional background, unlike me that is covered in fish and stuff like that. I really wanted to go to the beach. It's not possible, so this is the closest it gets for me.
There is a colleague who will be very happy about this compliment you just made. I will give it to him.
Very good, very good. How is the situation in Linz for you?
The situation is getting better and better in Austria. We have very, very low numbers for new corona cases in the last weeks. And the situation is getting better. The weather is getting better, which also helps with the corona depression. And we also had a very, very strong lockdown the first few weeks, but now some bans already get lifted, and it looks a lot more normal already than it did 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so there is hope and light ahead of us. That's beautiful. Good. And then we have with us Elisa Sermarmini in Rome, I believe, as well, just like me and Simone, from the network of even numbers. Rete dei Numeri Pari would that be a good translation, Elisa?
Yeah, it's good translation. Hello, everybody, and thank you for this wonderful invitation.
Well, we're looking forward to the discussions because we have very interesting networks. So you, Elisa, are part of the network of the Even Numbers that is focusing predominantly on poverty and inequalities and trying to bring different types of stakeholders together in focusing on this. We didn't actually get the chance, Josef, you have to give us a little bit more of a quick panoramic about what is the Innovation in Politics Institute, because it's a very, very intriguing title. And we have also with us Jim Sins, who is a URBACT expert from the BluAct City Network, URBACT being the EU program on European capacity building we were mentioning. So hi, Jim.
Hello, thank you for the invitation.
Where are you in now?
In the UK, based in London. The company's based in London, but I'm about half an hour outside London.
How are things looking for you there? We hear a lot about what is happening in the UK.
Yeah, week 5, I think, of lockdown. We still are able to get out of the house a little bit, so we're probably a little bit more fortunate than you are. So as long as we observe social distancing, we're okay.
Fingers crossed, absolutely. Well, before we start delving into the questions of the panelists, we would like to share a little bit with you, because the topic of labor, although it's today's topic, it's something we've been discussing a lot about also in Cooperative City in Quarantine in the previous episodes on food, when we were looking and when we were having our speakers talking about the challenges in the food production and distribution systems. We spoke about it definitely when we were talking about culture, being most of the people operating in the culture sector completely out of job and probably the last ones getting back into work. And just a couple of weeks ago, we spoke about tourism, which was another very, very problematic topic, with tourism this summer probably going to be, in the best of cases, more or less going to a very local location, summer location, if we're lucky. So what we would like to do today with our speakers is just try and look a little bit about how can we ensure that labor will be an opportunity for social cohesion and not leaving people behind, given the economic and social crisis that we're facing and that all news and politicians have been talking about. This has been probably the hottest topic, together with obviously the sanitary discussion and the health discussion. If we consider that it's estimated, who knows, but it could be that nearly 200 million people could end up being out of work as a result of this crisis. It's unimaginable numbers. It's hard for me to even see how much of this would be. And even though we're speaking so much about smart working, there are so many workers who cannot do smart working, whether these are riders or so many other jobs that are still operating under the current problematic challenges. And we know that there are, as we said, so many categories that have been very heavily affected on a very short term. So as culture, tourism, as we said, but there's also a lot of discussion also around sometimes less visible sectors, such as sex workers, but also people, for example, working in the harvesting of food. In Italy and Spain, there's been a huge discussion over also related to migrant inclusion. But at the same time, on the other side, there are some sectors where we see that there are some rises in the numbers of job opportunities. For example, in supermarkets, in supermarket chains, there are a lot of job offers, not necessarily in highly qualified positions, but still. And in the tech industry, just as we're having the discussion now all on digital, with the rise in the use of digital, that up until a few months ago, most of the big companies were considered the pure evil, tax evading and in fiscal paradises. Now what is happening actually is that we're seeing that this is actually the biggest opportunity that we have and of connecting up. And this is one of the sectors that is definitely increasing. So at the same time, though, we must not forget that we will be facing a huge crisis. They say that it might be a crisis that is comparable to the crisis of 1929. Who knows? But it could be that the numbers of this crisis will be much bigger than the numbers from the crisis of 2008-2009, which was already very harsh, especially on some countries. I myself, and I think Elisa and Simone, coming from Southern Italy, Southern Europe, can definitely testify on this. And it said that, you know, there could be only in Europe an unemployment of going up to more than 22 million people. This is up to 35 million people when there was approximately 22 million people unemployed as a result of 2008-2009 crisis. Now, we cannot rely completely on these numbers. They're fictional, they're just a panoramic, but it's giving a little bit the dimension about what we're talking about or potentially talking about. So under this not very pink situation, our speakers today have a fantastic mission of giving us hope. So on the 1st of May, it's time to also celebrate and have hope and also think about what it is that we really need to do to also get things to work better. So the discussion is, how can we ensure that we don't leave people behind in this process? And at this point, I think I would leave the floor to Josef to give us a little bit of a perspective on what do you think that is actually happening? What are the trends in the labour market that you see from the panoramic of the Innovation in Politics Institute?
So thank you for the opportunity to speak here. My name is Josef Zehetner, and I work at in Vienna at the Innovation in Politics Institute. My plan for this discussion is to tell you some practical work of mine and thus answer two questions, the two initial questions you just asked. I will especially refer to our page Coping with the Crisis and the Future Fund of the Chamber of Labor in Upper Austria, which is very hands-on and where I do project coaching for people interested in submitting their project to the fund. So I get to read a lot of projects from people who are trying to cope with the crisis right now and bring their respective work through the crisis. The Innovation in Politics Institute, where I work, is looking throughout Europe for best practice examples in politics, business, and civil society. That is why we were very quickly able to launch a site that collects lighthouse examples from all over Europe on the topic of the Corona crisis. Of course, the examples are not only on the topic of work during the crisis, but deal with a lot of aspects of our life during these difficult times. As you know, many people have children at home and trying to cope with the crisis with a lot of children and have to care for the children at home. So there are a lot of difficulties attached to this crisis, which are not especially at the workplace. Together with our country representatives in 15 European countries, we have now collected over 300 projects on this site, which we have made freely accessible to everyone. The aim is for politicians, civil society actors, civil servants, and private individuals to get ideas and see what political practices have worked during the crisis or what actions can be taken as a civil society. From this, we have now derived 4 insights and 10 things that politicians should think about right now during this crisis. And you can find this project on our homepage at innovationinpolitics.eu. So to answer the question before, what our institute normally does is we do the Innovation in Politics Awards, where we find these paragons, these paragon projects, and make them available and accessible. Because our institute was, you talked about the crisis 2009. I'm going to talk about another, the crisis, the migrant crisis 2015, where we saw a lot of erosion in democracy. And our institute was funded during these times to inject some positivity into politics. And we decided it was best because there are so many good projects in Europe, but people have difficulties to find them. And we bring these projects to the right people. And this is how we trying to bring some positivity into politics.
Okay.
So the second project is, I will shortly talk about.
If you like, we can get back to the next projects and also the proposals that you're having in the second round, because we will be having different round of questions. So I think this is a very, very good start. Thank you very much, Josef. I think this is setting up very good.
Elisa, you're working in Rome with the Rete Numeri Pari as association of cities and municipalities. We are monitoring how cities are reacting in Italy to the current situation of emergency, and we see that the most important effects and consequences on short term are quite visible on weak categories. Can you tell us how is the crisis affecting the poorer members of the society, and what are the risks connected to the current situation?
Yeah, sure. But first of all, it's necessary to remember that the starting point before the outbreak began was not fair and just society. Only in Italy, maybe you know, we had 5 million people in condition of absolute poverty, 9 million in relative poverty, 12 million people who were unable to give up medical care for economical reasons. The rate of early school leaving was around 14%. The unemployment is 11%. So in 10 years, the numbers of the poverty, it's triplicated, but it's triplicated also the business of the billionaire people was 13, now it's 35. And it's not the only one that made business with the crisis because the mafia, no? It's also the mafia families that made around 110 billions of year. So this was the situation before. So you can imagine now, it's clear that a lot of people, it's estimated that in December in Italy, we will have 18 million people in poverty because it's not just people who haven't home, you know, or who live in the precary balance. No, maybe we can think for the people that made 1, 2, or 3 hot jobs, perhaps in the dark world, that today find themselves without any guarantee and without any help from the state. In Italy, it's estimated that 27% of workers became poor if they lost 3 months of the salary. And it's happened now. In the decree of the Prime Minister that established the social safety needs for this phase, you can imagine that about 6.4 million people were excluded, and most of those who managed to apply, the money still not arrived. With the number of the poverty that I mentioned at the beginning, we must also add those who are sliding into poverty now or who immediately collapsed in the 9th of March when we started the social isolation. So if the government continue to make inadequate and ineffective proposal to deal with this situation, these people will end up in the mafia's reserves labor force. And from there, it will be difficult to go back.
Thank you, Elisa. Now, this is also something that is a topic that is very complex and also very, very misunderstood abroad. There's been a lot of debate on some news articles published in Germany saying that Italy should not receive European funds because it would go to mafia. That's not quite the way, because mafia has a liquidity that they can buy already. They've already bought everybody and already provided social health, social care and welfare to most of the families in difficulty. So this is absolutely a very, very relevant topic. Jim, now we move from we're looking at the ones in the greatest difficulty, as Elisa was saying, to looking into also some of the business sectors, for example, from your perspective. From the network of cities that are working on the blue economy that you're working with, what is it that you see? What are the trends that are currently taking place with your cities?
So I think you've alluded to some of the real challenges in terms of some of the sectors that are worst affected already. So you've talked about the tourism sector and the culture sector, where there's already quite a significant impact on those sectors through the current crisis. I think the really slightly worrying thing, before I get onto a more positive note with this crisis than the previous crisis, is that it affects successful businesses, as much as it affects businesses that are in trouble. Normally in a crisis during a recession or some kind of depression, you generally expect to see a cleansing of the business base, and that those businesses that are less than successful go out of business and are reborn in some way, shape or other. The problem with this crisis is it's affecting those successful businesses as much as it is the ones that are struggling. On a more positive note, I've noticed a few things which are really positive. I see some community action, so I see some stronger local cohesion. I don't know whether you've talked about this already in the previous episodes, but seeing much more localized community collaboration. So, and that community collaboration also is happening in special interest groups. So I don't know if you've come across, for example, Corona Concerts, which was set up by an individual musician who invited other musicians who were struggling to gig to come and join this Facebook page, and it now has 2,500 members. We see the same thing with, in the UK, we have a freelancers, an antiviral freelancers group, which has 16,000 members, where they're all trying to help each other. So the positive thing is, I think that out of great crisis, often you see necessity as the mother of invention, and you see people coming together and acting together in consort in order to try and tackle some shared challenges. I think the last thing I'd say is that it strikes me as well now more than any other time, businesses are going to be using this time to redefine their value proposition. And one of the things that's really obvious is that it strikes me that those businesses that are going to come out the other side healthy are going to be the ones that are also looking after the populace at the moment. I don't know if you have the same experience, but we have one or two companies in the UK at the moment who are announcing redundancies very undiplomatically. They're announcing them on the media before they're telling the staff that they might have to change, they might have to adapt. And of course, they're not seen particularly in a very positive light. But then on the other hand, we've got large telephony companies that are offering free mobile services to key workers. And they're the ones who, in some senses, I think that have got the importance of being seen to be socially inclusive in the way that they're presenting themselves to the market.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, I think it's really reaction of the private sector in this situation is quite different in different countries and also in different phases of this emergency. Many industries were disrupted by the pandemic, and also many process of innovation, automation, which were already starting before this crisis can be transformed and completed in the next period. We'll see the effects of this on labor. But I want to ask to Josef, what are the proposals that your institute are preparing in this period, and how we can ensure social cohesion in the current situation, but also on the medium and long term?
So I want to talk to you about, I want to bring two examples fast, because I know we are short on time. The first one is from this fund, from the Chamber of Labor Austria, I told you before, where we have digitization projects. I think the trend is the more digitization you have, the better you live through the crisis. And it doesn't necessarily depend on just being IT companies, but also cultural workers and everybody. The more collaboration tools you have in your company, the more digitalization you have in your company, the more you are equipped to work now together still, where you are not physically coming together, the better you will go through this crisis. We had, and this is something I want to tell you because today is Labor Day, it's the 1st of May. So we had a project where a firm has made home office places for their workers. And together with this, they introduced a 4-day week for the workers and 30 hours a week with their full wages still. And they also ensured that no emails, no calls delivered to the employees on the weekends or during non-working hours, non-business hours. And they just, this was not a project during the Corona crisis, but we had this in fall, and it is now fully implemented. And they sent us a letter thanking us that they are now able to fully work through this crisis. and they have very, very, very good experiences with the 4-day work, with the flexibility. The workers are very happy, and also the entrepreneur is very happy because he says productivity didn't change in any way. It even got better than before, now that they have more home office and now that they are working like this. And the second project is a reminder that for social cohesion, we can't forget the initiatives and things and columns which are supporting social cohesion. And one of them is workers' councils. And workers' councils right now, and this is also a very good Labor Day topic, workers' councils right now have no means to get in touch with the workers. And if there are short-term work where people only work like 4 hours or more in during the week, where they can't get together for employee informations in the company, it makes the work for work councils very hard during these times, during these trying times where we need the work councils more than ever, because otherwise there are, as Jim already said, there are some black sheep from the companies who push all the bad things and all the weight of this crisis onto their workers. Yeah. And so digitalization projects which help the workers, the work councils get in touch with the workers are now very much important, and I'm happy that we got a lot of these projects through this fund running. So the work councils still get into touch. This is very important for social cohesion. Don't forget work councils. Don't forget the work of work councils, because they're doing amazing work also during these trying times that workers, please excuse my language, that workers don't get fucked.
That's fundamental, absolutely. No, thanks, Josef. That's really, really a very relevant point to remember, especially on today and in this moment. Elisa, this also brings to, it's very close also to what you've been pushing very much with the network of the fair numbers. Can you tell us briefly what have been the proposals that you're pushing forward from your network?
Yeah, sure. We have made a concrete proposal to the government and the Italian Parliament, both as a network of even number and also together with other social and trade union organizations in our country. We often hear people say nothing will be like before, but this is the refrain of these days, and we would like that many things to never return as before, and it's necessary to do this quickly and well because we must defeat not only COVID-19 but also the misery, economic and social problems which we have already lived since 2008. COVID-19 exposed, hello, please, exposed and brought out the failures of the economic and social policy implemented in the recent years. It's necessary to do quickly and well because the country is no longer able to bear other errors that translate into greater inequality, social insecurity, environmental and ecological injustice. We need to put in the center the needs and the fundamental rights of the people in the political agenda.
And one of the things you've been pushing very much for is on the minimum income, right? This is one of the main topics you've been pushing forward very much.
Yes, really is a basic income because there's no step for enter to the basic income, and there's no measure that you have to respect, something like work for money, that it's not welfare, but it's workfare of the poor people. The second, it's clear for us, it's the blockage or the drastic reduction of the rents regulated by the market and the blocking of the enforcement procedures. And maybe the Josef and James don't know, but in Italy we have a law that it rents impossibility for the people who live on the street or in building for a necessity to take the access, the address of residence. And this means in the real life can't take a general medical course or take the children for school, no? And now in this moment, this means that the people can take the help to the institution that is a state or the government or the local institution.
Right.
Yeah, and at the end, at the last but really not the least, we need an addition measure of works, education, health, and housing. We need to build an organic system and multi-year plan of intervention in favor of those people that for years have lived in condition of unacceptable social exclusion and marginalization on our country. Only in this way we can.
And we will get back to this because we got some questions also from the audience that are related to this. So thank you, Elisa.
Thank you too.
Yes, in fact, what we see in these weeks is that cities that are better reacting to the current situations are the ones which invested a lot on collaboration with local actors, with local stakeholders, and are basing on this collaboration also some future strategy for recovery. The cities involved in the BluAct networks, in networks such as the BluAct network, which since Jim's as lead expert are a great example of that. But Jim, I ask you, what are the elements that we can learn from cities? There are some lessons, good practices, solutions that the BluAct network cities are developing in these weeks in terms of support to not only to the startups, but in general to the entrepreneurial spirit of the community.
Yeah, I mean, my sense is it's a difficult time, but what we're seeing a lot of cities doing is digitizing, picking up on Josef's point, is digitizing their support structures. So they're moving their whole entrepreneurial ecosystem to be online. So for example, in Ostend, they're looking at providing their incubation support services through Zoom and through Teams. And I have examples of Greek organizations running online hackathons and running a British Library, for example, has moved all of its incubation services now to online. So I think what we're seeing in this difficult time, because it's very difficult for people to leave their home and continue to be an entrepreneur, the people that are being successful at supporting entrepreneurs, whether existing businesses or startups, are those that are doing things like this and delivering online support. So I think that's the primary goal, that we're seeing lots of cities in BluAct moving lots of their entrepreneurial ecosystem to a virtual model.
Thanks, Jim. No, I think that's very interesting because there's a lot of issues that are rising that are very relevant. And in the meantime, Chris has joined us. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank
So
you.
I see you have a top that is already explaining what are you representing. Very good branding. We like that on the 1st of May. It's important. So our new speaker is Chris Richmond, who is the CEO of Migrants, which is a platform developing training and capacity building for migrants and newcomers. Based in Bologna, but we see you also have a number of international activities. And very welcome, very good timing. Here is also Lucia Scopelliti from the city of Milan. Very welcome to you too as well. Lucia is working in the business and economic development of the city of Milan and running also a series of international activities, also as a consultant, also in Portugal in a urban innovative action project in Aveiro. Hello to you too.
Hi, hello everyone.
So first of all, happy 1st of May, happy Workers' Day. And we've been having a first round of discussion with Jim, Elisa, and Josef to discuss a little bit about the role also of businesses, and also how to ensure social inclusion in the face of the upcoming crisis. And together with Simone, we've been facilitating a little bit this discussion, and I'm very happy to have you on board in this second round of discussion. So this is a bit of a flexible format, as you can see. At this point, in the best of traditions, we're running slightly late. So what I would say, let's stay all on board, because I would say that way then in a 20 minutes or so, we can also have the discussion also from the question of our audience. We have thought of making it in 2 rounds, but I think let's just stay all on board together, and it's much nicer for the discussion, because I think also Jim, Josef, and Elisa would be very curious to know about what Lucia and Chris are doing. I see the nodding faces, so let's do it like that. Okay, so maybe I would first ask Lucia, ladies first in the best of traditions, to tell us a little bit. First of all, you're in Milan, one of the hotspots in Europe of coronavirus. First of all, how are you, and is everybody okay, of your beloved ones?
Thank you. Yes, I'm fine. I mean, lockdown is a challenge for everyone, but fortunately, it's the biggest damage I personally felt. So yeah, we are right in Milan, and hopefully, since Monday, we will be able to make a little more movement than now. So yeah,
let's not keep our hopes too high. I'm in Rome, Simone is in Rome as well, and I think phase 2 is going to be basically a renaming of phase 1. So, but anyway. And Chris, is everything okay with you in Bologna there? Everybody is okay?
Thank God, we good. Yeah.
Good. That's a very good start to the discussion. Fundamental. Okay. So, Elisa, can you tell us? There's been a lot of discussion in Milan also. First of all, for those in the audience who might not know necessarily, like us Italians, been following what is happening in Milan on a daily basis. At the beginning, just before the lockdown, there was a big discussion about, Milan doesn't stop, Milan continues. Then, unfortunately, Milan was hit very harshly from the coronavirus. And now there is a big discussion with the region. Shall we open? Shall we not open? Shall we stay closed? And the city has launched a participatory plan for the post-COVID phase. Now, can you tell us a little bit about what you see in this, and also what do you see in terms of labor, and with the aim of also ensuring inclusion also for those who are the weakest in our society? What do you think? How can the city plan help in this direction, or can it?
Yeah, Milan unfortunately was brutally hit by the virus, and consequently by the crisis. I was reading today's data and first estimates by the trade unions about a loss by the end of the year of 150,000 job places. And just to have a benchmark, after the crisis of 2008, there were 140,000 Milanese unemployed, so even worse than that. The city is coping with the situation since the beginning. We were very fast in being invited first, and then it became compulsory to go and work from home office. And recently, the city launched this Milano 2020, which is a participatory strategic plan. It's a very visionary, but at the same time, it also contains immediate action that will be taken. And of course, labor is at the center of this plan, basically with 2 big drivers. The first one is the aim of the municipality to encouraging home office, not just for its employees, but also in the context and relationship with the public and private companies in the city. So from this point of view, the city is really encouraging these measures. And the second driver is the work we have been doing about timing and timetable policies. So the effort to help companies and employers to desynchronize the staff entry and exit times in order to facilitate travel. So investing on the transport system and all the measures that surrounds the movement of citizens. So these two were the two main drivers. The document is expected to be commented by citizens, and we already received in just 4 days almost 800 emails from citizens, and these emails are all collected and spread among the different directorates that take care of the specific policy. As I was saying at the beginning, the home office within the municipality of Milan started very fast. And we were lucky because we were experimenting these home office tools and possibility to work from home since 2016. So the first attempts are back in time, but before the crisis we had almost 500 people in home office, and just after the COVID emergency, today we have 6,000 employees that are working from home. The total of the employees of the municipality is 14,000. So there is almost half of them working from home. The technological infrastructure is coping very well. We have some tools and devices in order to upload managerial acts, political acts. So this is going very very well for us, and also the ICT department was able to provide personal computer and laptops for employees that did not have one at home. So from this point of view, it went quite well, and home office, of course, goes along with the digitization of services, because if we stay at home, of course, we must be able to provide services to citizens. And since March the 9th, all services to citizens have been guaranteed digitally. Of course, the sole exception was for the celebration of weddings and civil unions, because they were suspended by decree. And also the so-called citizens files that the municipality is providing, market records in number, because in the month of March, over 25,000 personal data certificates were digitally downloaded, 82% of the total. So these numbers in the general dramatic situation are quite encouraging for us.
Thank you, Lucia. We saw in these weeks that many different categories in Italy are very active in responding to this crisis, also with volunteering activities. Migrants are doing a lot of this activities in different cities of the country. Chris, how is the Migrants platform responding to the current crisis, and what are the requests that you are getting from your community? Chris?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Let me say a couple of things before telling you what Migrants is doing for private companies and our community. We believe that skills pave the way for employability and prosperity. Individuals with the right skills can aspire to high quality jobs and fully realize their potential as active citizens and self-confident citizens. So we believe also that the aging and the shrinking labor force in the EU leads in some cases to a shortage of skills. And to overcome this, we need to increase the labor market participation and productivity. Inclusive labor market, according to us, should benefit from the skills of talent of all, including individuals with low level of skills and other fragile groups, including migrants. Technically, qualification indicates to employers what people know and are able to do, but rarely take into account skills acquired outside formal learning institutions, so informal skills. So those skills can be underestimated. Identifying and validating such skills is important, especially for low-skilled people, unemployed people, and obviously for immigrants. So validating informal skills help to enhance and capitalize on their experience and talent, identify further training needs, and size opportunity for retraining. So to advise appropriate, we can say, policies, decision makers, but also recruiters needs one thing: reliable information and data. So high quality data. So Migrants technically is an app based on what we call microlearning, and we deliver two kinds of services. The first service, it's about information on the rights and duties and the rules of the game, so how the asylum system works. The second service is about training. So we have a bunch of questions, so model quizzes on hard skills and soft skills, and also language level, to validate the background and previous skills, but also to give the opportunity to our trainees to empower and learn new things and get better and better day over day. So through the data that we collect, we can track not just the background, but also the areas of strength, weaknesses, interest for each single trainee, and generate through the data what we call a dynamic CV. So the CV gets updated every single time a trainee uses the app and has an activity through the app. So we collect data to share part of the data related to the activity of the users with third parties, in this case with private companies. So what we see in those weeks right here is the fact that companies reduced their, let's say, their shortage for the next months and probably also for the next year, so 2021. And they try to reschedule the priorities. It is obvious that high skill profile and probably low skill profile will benefit from the market shortage because there is a high number of requests about it. And let's say that medium skilled workers will have much more problems compared to the others. So right now, we're just trying to, better understand the needs of the market. We talk to the companies to better understand what they need, when they need it. And through the platform, not through Migrants, but we build another platform, it's called Pickme. Companies have the opportunity to interrogate the database of 88,000 profiles, daily updated, and they can get a short list of the top 5 profiles for that specific role they require, and track the weekly performance of one or more trainees, and pick the trainee that they think is the most, let's say, the most talented according to the role they require. So they don't have the necessity to choose or pick a specific profile in real time, but they can track the profile for a period of time and see what is the evolution of one or more profile and compare the skills of 2 or more trainees, and when they need and when they want it, they can engage the profile and the trainee. So that's the kind of service that we have at the moment for private companies, but also for work agency and also for corporates.
Thank you, Chris. I think it's really interesting the way you're acting in Bologna, but the current situation more in general is particularly challenging for all the big and medium cities in Europe that are investing on innovation, on jobs and skills. Lucia, from your perspective, working in Milan and as expert of the Urban Innovative Actions project in Aveiro in Portugal, what do you think that will be needed in Europe to ensure that labor is granted in cities after this crisis?
Well, the question is very wide. What I can say is many economists in Italy and Southern Europe, they ask to strengthen European Union on a political and fiscal level. The common market is not enough, and fiscal compact stays really on top. So all countries apply separate fiscal schemes, and there is a lot of fragmentation. And also we do compete with the USA and China, that for different reasons, they have more power and have the means to react faster to the emergency in terms of economic, labor policies, and so on. You are all aware about the discussions about the use of ESM in Europe and so on. My perspective is very focused also on what is happening in the labor market for startups. And we saw big differences among the sectors. Some of them crashed, some of them literally exploded. In Italy, the government did not produce any ad hoc measure for innovative startups survival, for example. I was reading this startup genome global survey. They just released it a few days ago. And according to this report, since the beginning of the crisis, 74% of startups have had to terminate full-time employees, and 40% of all startups had to lay off 20% or more of their staff. They also, the guy from Startup Genome also interviewed funders and startup executives, and it seems that for them, the most helpful policies for their business would be to receive grants to preserve the company liquidity, to get access to instruments to boost investment, and to receive support to protect employees, for example, receive grants for payroll and so on. Within the European Commission, the EIC Accelerator, which is the new SME instrument, I believe it will play an important role. So far, we are aware about the call that they launched for a startup and SMEs solution to tackle coronavirus outbreak, but it was a very single initiative. So I think that we should look forward new tools and programs from this organization. And also, of course, it will be necessary to provide specific policies and support measures for startups in some sectors. As I said at the beginning, some sectors were most afflicted, like tourism, culture, entertainment, and so on. So I think that we should expect something, especially from this player.
Yeah. No, thanks a lot, Lucia, because I can see that as you were speaking, I could see Jim that was absolutely nodding, because this is also some of the things that he was raising. And as Chris was speaking earlier, I could see that there was Josef, who was just explaining how the Innovation in Politics Institute was born out of the migrant crisis of 2015. So and Elisa from the network of the FAIR numbers also is obviously very interested in the labor inclusion. So it's quite interesting how, as we're speaking, there's so many connections in the discussion. And at this point, based also on what Lucia was saying, Chris, can you tell us a little bit from your perspective, being on the one hand a startup yourself, and on the other hand working on empowerment of labor empowerment of migrant community, that in many cases maybe is not necessarily highly, there are many that are, but many of the people who come might not necessarily be highly educated and necessarily might not be so easy to get into highly qualified positions. Can you tell us a little bit, for the type of work that you're doing, where do you see that you would need more support? What should be the measures that should be taken to make the work that you're doing with migrants and Pickme more effective?
Well, first of all, we need a wider consciousness about the value of data. So governments and public institutions needs to better understand the value of data and how to manage data. But on the other hand, it is obvious that there is a cultural problem. So public debate perceive immigration as a problem and not as an opportunity. So it's pretty hard to mix the two things, because we have a lot of Italian unemployed people. So on the other side, we need to pay attention to how many immigrants we matched with private companies. But it is pretty clear that this is just a part of the iceberg, because a couple of weeks ago, the government released, maybe 3 weeks ago, released a statement saying that there is the need of at least 400,000 immigrants working in the agriculture field for the next weeks, but probably for the next months. But it's also clear that this is just a starting point, because sooner or later, also based on the demography of Italy, this country will need at least 40,000 immigrants per year until 2060, to decrease of 20% the cost of health, social assistance, and social issues. So sooner or later, we need to deal with this thing right here. And we need, according to me, to give the opportunity to immigrants to express their full potential and maybe, of course, identify skills and the potential, and then relocate immigrants based not on, let's say, not like the current relocation program, but according to me, the relocation program should be based on the market shortage and the available skills. So match available skills with the request of the market shortage. So according to me, this could be the right moment to build a new European policy for the relocation program based on the skills and based on the market shortage. So we need to move forward with the discussion and have maybe a deeper discussion about the opportunity that immigrants bring to host communities. And we don't need to forget the fact that when we seek for a job opportunity, on the other side, there is someone that, he's an entrepreneur. So we need to think that immigrants can build new companies and, some value, and also bring some opportunities for local citizens. So we need to work on both, but it's not easy to be an entrepreneur, especially in those moments right here. We didn't lay off any of the member of our staff. It's also true that we hired 2 people lately, and we're still hiring some people. But we need some more entrepreneurs, to open up and create some new jobs opportunities, not just for immigrants, but especially for host communities. So this is the impact that we migrants can bring to the table. And on the other side, we need public institutions to, have a better quality of the discussion related to immigration.
Had to unmute myself. Thanks, Chris. Now I think that's raising quite a rising the stakes, but I think this is actually what we have to do at this moment, because otherwise it's as Elisa was saying now, there's a lot of people are saying nothing will be back because of coronavirus, nothing will be like it was before. But I think if we don't make sure we have to fix a little bit what direction we want to go from before. So that's a very good point.
We forget a lot. So I don't think that we will, get better in the next months, because a lot of things will happen. A lot of things happen already. And we will probably forget all the nice thing we were saying a couple of weeks ago. So we need to change model and stuff like that, but I'm not that sure that will happen.
We have to keep working on it, and I think we have to keep working on it together. So this is a little bit the humble ambition of the getting together here today. Also on the 1st of May, Chris's comment when I phoned him was, "You want me to work on the 1st of May?" But anyway, just like all of us anyway, everybody's been working anyway since this morning, so it doesn't really change that much. So I'm just joking. But I think at this point we have questions from our audience. I would like to read a couple to you to get a little bit of feedback on what you're seeing. I apologize with our public, because it's quite nice that people write. I don't know if in parallel you're also seeing the Facebook page. There's people saying, "Hi, I'm in Oslo. Hi, I'm in Vienna. I am wherever it is," and trying to and sharing also. There's parallel conversations going on in the Facebook chat, which I can't really follow in full detail. But there are a couple of questions that I think would be quite interesting. So Helene says, "I think social cohesion is related to the kind of jobs we will create over the next 1 to 5 years," which I think is pretty much what also Chris was saying. "Social movements could and should work with job creation and entrepreneurship, and this must be tied to advances in circular and regenerative businesses. Wasted, underused resources, both human and material, must be connected. Keeping it small scale and local, it can be powerful to create strong and interconnected communities." And she would like to know what's your opinion about this, and if you have some interesting examples that you're seeing that you really think are best practices we could share. And I'll read another couple of comments so that we can have a round of comments and impressions from you, and you pick up on what is closest to you. Manuela, for example, is commenting on the fact that in Italy, and she's curious to know whether you're seeing this also in other countries, there is a big issue in relation also to labor related to gender, because we see that with the smart working, a lot of the work is on the family is on the women's shoulders. And she would like to know, in the cases of many countries who will not be going back to school as normal, and therefore this is impacting on women and work, what do you see What do you see is happening and what could be done in this direction? And then we have another comment from Jorge, who is commenting, are there any new national policies pushing or boosting digitalization during this pandemic, as we have different levels of digitalization in Europe? I think we have some other comments, but I think this should give, these are varied enough directions for the moment. And I leave the panel for you. Remember that some of you are muted in case you would like to give immediate feedback. Don't be shy, go ahead. Jim, what's your impressions?
Yeah, I love Helene's construct of joining social action, social inclusion and entrepreneurship, maybe even social entrepreneurship together in local local constructs and structuring that, particularly around circular economy or regenerative material models. I don't see a lot of it in reality. I don't see a lot of that kind of thinking of making entrepreneurship and social action and social inclusion come together at the level of the community at a really ground level. And for me, lots of the circular economy thinking is still up in the clouds. So I think it's a great idea. It's finding the models and the tools that can make that a reality that I think is the real challenge.
Josef, you wanted to...
Yes, thank you for this. I know of a few projects who do exactly that. There is bringing social entrepreneurship and digitalization together. There is, for example, and I know, Jim, in your country it's a little bit hard right now because you're leaving also the EU, and many of these social entrepreneurship projects were co-funded by the European Union, which now don't have funding anymore. So, but still, there is a really cool network. It's called Digital Social Innovation in Great Britain, which is for social entrepreneurship, and it's a platform where you can search for investors into your social entrepreneur into your social company, or your social project. There is also a project that is a bit similar to Chris' project, but also a little bit different in this context in Great Britain. I think digitalization is a major boost for social entrepreneurship. It is a major boost for getting people connected. Social entrepreneurship lives from people coming together and talking about their ideas, and giving and sharing these ideas and making them accessible to others. And so digitalization, in my opinion, is a huge boost for social entrepreneurship and helps it in many ways. And the other thing I wanted to say a word about is about boosting digitalization. Yes, the problem is government funds everywhere are a bit slow. And I'm sure you have recognized this also in Great Britain, in Italy, or wherever you are listening from. Government funds tend to be really, really slow and make the funds for that available long after you made the investment, and long after you already had the need for the money to be spent, and your company is already in trouble, and you need the digitalization to keep the company afloat, but also the money is not available in the short term, but just guaranteed by our states. So this is a huge problem in the digitalization right now, because a company would need money ASAP, and they would need projects, and also they need a bit direction sometimes in this project. So, and to make this available fast, governments everywhere right now struggle with this problem. Yeah, just to make some to say something from my own company, you can go to our website where we have a few of these policies. We highlight a few of these policies, and you can see maybe if you know policymakers in your country, forward them to this, so maybe they get some ideas of how to handle this and make these funds available now, because we need these funds now, not in a few months.
That's a very, very good point. And the access to the funding now is something also Elisa was pushing a lot in this moment. And that's good, Josef, you were saying that anybody with questions can go on the Innovation in Politics Institute for further information, because we were getting in the meantime. Can you ask Josef to share the link of the initiative he's talking about? So, okay, so that's where they can get it. I would like to ask the other speakers, would you like to have a bit of feedback on some of the comments and questions that were?
Yeah, if I can, Daniela.
Go ahead, Elisa. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I would say something about the first question that you read about the type of work that we can create after this crisis. I think that until we don't understand that we live on a planet and the same planet, and we are all connected to each other, and nobody save themselves, we can create never good work. Today we change the Workers' Day, but you are Italian like me. The worker today is not similar for free or autodetermination. No, maybe sometimes it's something like slavery, we can name like this. And we need to promote economic policy that put together the right of work and the right of health. This crisis showed to us that it's not ever right, these things, because now there's a lot of people that have to choose. I want I go to work, or I want risk to take the COVID-19, because if I don't work, I don't take money. So what I do, what I have to do, okay? And the terms of the limits of the planet, the climate change, the environmental injustice, ecological injustice, for us is the question, the main question, because we can exit from this crisis without right. We know we have lived the 2008 crisis, no, and was paid by the middle people, and maybe this is the same. This will be the same, and we don't want. We have to contract nationalization and rebuild global solidarity, and we can do this investment with research of the ecological transition of product activities and the energy supply chain. This is good work that put together the right to work, the health, and the dignity for everyone.
Fundamental, absolutely.
If I also can
go ahead.
Step in. No, I would just like to mention two very quick things. There is an initiative that started from Seoul. It was launched by the Seoul city government, and it's called the Transforming Cities for Decent Work. And it is something very interesting that the city of Milano is following by 2-3 years. Our deputy mayor also went to Seoul to take part to this to the first convention, and it's something that, for example, leads in the city of Milano to open a front office for riders together with the trade unions in order to understand if within these contracts by the different home delivery companies, some rights were effectively protected. And this is a nice initiative. I would like to mention we are really into it. And about the digitalization, there is also something that we don't link immediately all the time, but also the digital manufacturing thing, a movement I think that plays a role. And in this crisis, there were many interesting activities that came from the maker movement. In Milan as well, many Fab Labs in collaboration with some NGOs or organizations such as Emergency. They are doing wonderful things in order to provide masks, face shields, and other protection tools. But also we in Milan belongs to are working in a European project called Reflow, and it's about circular economy and digital manufacturing, and together with many other cities. So actually we are tackling this kind of initiative, the initiative launched by the maker movement in response to the COVID crisis, and it's something that is happening everywhere in Europe, and not just in Europe. In New York, the Economic Development Corporation launched a call for Fab Labs and makers in order to provide locally protection tools, and also a call for accelerators in order to build clinical equipment. So this is also something that goes together with digitalization. It's not exactly platform economy we are thinking about. It's very concrete, and it's happening in cities right now.
Some of you might have seen that there was this beautiful project of, I think it was a decathlon, can we say it, or is it advertising, of the mask, the how do you call it, not snorkeling?
Ventilator,
it
was some...
like sort of going down to see the fishes like I'm doing now, but having this system to help with the ventilation, which was something that actually had a lot of visibility, but there's been a lot of examples, as Lucia was saying, so absolutely. Chris, we would like to have a bit of an impression of some of the comments that came from your side as well.
Yeah, I think what we need to do right now is to open up the doors to social entrepreneurship. We need some more entrepreneurs. And first of all, it's not about making money. You know, personally, I have no paycheck yet, 3 years later, but I used to pay the salary for 14 people every single month. So this is something interesting. But according to me, we should focus a lot more about the pain that citizens are facing. The pain, not the service that we would like to deliver. So what kind of pain and what exactly problem we want to solve, and then try better to understand what kind of services are already available on the market, and not to build something that already exists, or to copy something without any sense. So yes, according to me, we should boost Fab Labs, but also incubators, accelerators, virtually probably, but we need to enhance this type of learning path for potential and aspiring entrepreneurs, because yes, entrepreneurship, according to me, generates some more innovation, competitiveness, and especially in Italy, we need to open up the doors to social entrepreneurs, especially to the new generations. So this is something that I personally care about. So I'm committed also not to do my small part of work, but also help others to to keep believing and achieve it, because it's really important. And still, I keep saying that without entrepreneurs, we cannot generate some value. So this is the thing that I keep preaching every single day, especially to my generation and the youngest generation.
Thanks, Chris. So definitely social entrepreneurship can be one of the direction also for policy and financial support for the very short term to start doing it now, amongst one of the issues that is coming up from this discussion. Thanks a lot. Simone, I think we're heading towards the closing of this session today, and that was a lot of input.
Yes, Daniela, I feel that we heard so many elements for being realistic about what is going to happen in the future. The way we work is completely changing in a few weeks. One of the phenomena we didn't mention today, but I think it's really relevant, is the end of the offices that we are seeing. We are in this major global work from home experiment, and I'm sure that when cities will be back to normality, we will see the positive effects of this revolution, also in terms of real effects of digitalization and support to new types of enterprises, new types of innovation which are emerging also from our homes, not only from the traditional places where we do innovation. So that's really positive, and I'm really confident that all the energies and visions that we heard today will be decisive in the future to create better jobs in our cities, better skills. We hear everywhere now that we don't want to come back to the cities, to the world as before. We want to make some changes. We want to profit of this opportunity to make some changes, and I'm pretty sure that labor is one of the fields where these changes are most needed.
Thanks a lot. So before heading to the thank yous and goodbyes and everything, we would just like to have a little sharing with you. Because as some of you might remember, we very often try to have a little literature pill for the closing, just to raise the spirits.
After the enslaving subordination of the individual to the division of labor, and thereby also the antithesis between mental and physical labor, has vanished. After, labor has become not only a means of life, but life's prime want. After, the productive forces have also increased with the all-round development of the individual, and all the springs of commonwealth flow more abundantly. Only then society inscribe on its banners, from each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs. Karl Marx, critic of the Gotha program, 1875.
On the 1st of May, Karl Marx is a must. So, and I think some of the messages over more than 100 years are still very valid. So definitely good food for thought. This said, my dears, first of all, a huge thank you to our panelists for, on the 1st of May, staying with us and thinking together. And what happens from this discussion is that there's the audience with us today, who we thank very, very much for the comments. And we apologize that we didn't answer all of the comments, but we can't keep our panelists until this evening. It is the 1st of May after all for everybody, and they have the right for an evening off as well. But we will write an article like after all of the episodes, where we really try to highlight some of the things that came out as the proposals and some of the ideas that we really want to push forward in terms of advocacy. As you know, as Utopian, and together with our panelists, we try to very much push forward towards European policy. Most of us are very active in this sense. So we really believe that even though all of us are only a little drop in the sea, altogether, I think this is a good metaphor given my background, altogether we can make a bit of a change, and we can make a big change, but we have to understand towards what. And I think this discussion today has brought a lot of, also for me, very unexpected aspects to be considering on. So I would really like to thank you all. And I would like to thank also my team from Utopian for making working exactly, my colleagues working together with me also on the 1st of May. So thanks also for that. And this said, I ask our panelists to stay online. We will just have a little cheers. I'm sorry with the audience. If we were in real life, we would all have a drink together after this. And unfortunately, this is the limit of digital. It will only be us speakers doing this together. And we look forward to having a series of events and discussion and meeting and hugging all after all this pandemic. But in the meantime, we can only say, stay tuned also for reading the article and having the insights and sharing this also for those of you who couldn't join the live discussion today. And join next Friday the discussion, which will be on education and the role of e-learning in access to education, which is also a very hot topic in terms of accessibility to everybody to schooling and education. So interesting topics as always, with very interesting speakers. Thanks a lot. And Simone, I think we can say goodbye to our audience.
Bye.
Bye-bye.